Hello again, everybody. Another question from a mentee, and today's question, or actually she sent it a few days ago, but the question is, what is your process for writing a book? And I've written one book and I'm in the middle of writing a second book. And my process from my first book was learning. So I don't have a formal education in writing, but I love writing, and I always knew somewhere would come a book at some point. And the first book I wrote, the very first line of the very first chapter played in my head over and over again for probably 10 years before I wrote the book. And it would crop up every now and then, and I would just hear it in my kind of clairaudient mind. Would come fairly unbidden, meaning I wasn't meditating about a book necessarily. I wasn't doing automatic writing necessarily. It just would pop in. So I always felt like, it was just the book, the future produced book saying, I'm here whenever you're ready. So when I was ready, I felt ready. I guess it would be about 5-6 years ago when I started it. I had finished my doctoral dissertation on past life regression. And that had taken me about 4 years to write, just because I was busy with work. And so I wrote that, finished that, took a couple of years off just to work with clients and students and not have a big writing project. And then I felt ready to write the book. And it just kind of, like so many of the things I do in this work, it just kind of came on me like an impulse. And I'm a big truster and follower of my impulses at this stage. And so that coincided with, I think I was flipping through social media, probably Instagram, and a synchronicity that I paid attention to. Right long about that time, I began to become aware of a book writing coaching mentorship that James Van Praagh was offering. He's a psychic medium. You may have heard about. He's been around quite a while, written a ton of books. And I'm not a huge follower of his work, but I'm aware of him as a, prominent psychic medium. And I just paid attention to, he was offering this coaching on writing a book. And I thought, I would not mind having a coach for this process. And I thought it would be interesting to see how a psychic would coach a reading, a book project. So I did his process, and if I remember correctly, I don't know if he offers that anymore. It was pretty rigorous, and I appreciated it as a psychic medium because it was all about following impulses, opening to spirit. It was, if I recall, it was not anything conventional or what you might expect a conventional approach would be to writing a book. I don't even believe an outline was required. There were some great meditations. He had us establish an inner, writing sanctuary that I still use. And so it's a place, it's an astral place I sort of created, and I feel like the creative spirit that I connect with when I write, we kind of concocted or created this space. And so when I'm going to sit down to write, I enter this liminal space that is, it looks very earth-like to me. So that's a prompt for me. When I open those double doors and emerge into this space that one of his meditations helped me to create, that means I'm writing. And so that's a ritual that helps me. Other things about his program that were helpful, it just was helpful to be accountable. I think there were some writing exercises or some prompts, so I knew it would be great to have that structure in that direction. And then it culminated with you were offered to submit your first chapter and get some personalized feedback from him. And that was great because his feedback for my chapter was he didn't get it, essentially. I'm paraphrasing, but he didn't get where I was going in my first chapter. So I got the opportunity to hear that from someone that I had come to respect in the writing program, and which I still do. I got a lot out of that program, and I got a finished book. But it helped me then, I don't know, kind of provide myself with my own acceptance and affirmation. I felt that it was a good chapter. I felt that it was a good start. And so I went with it. It helped me trust my own instincts. Sidebar to that, my instinct and my personal feeling about that for him at that time, I think he might have been overextended and maybe had at the end a lot of first chapters to review. I kind of got a sense he was a little pressed for time. Anyway, that part is not as important, I think, in what I'm trying to share, as much as the structure. Like I said, his guidance, he was approaching it very much from an opening to spirit place, just letting the writing go, not getting analytical about it. And that worked for me great. And so from the very first words I wrote to the book was published and up for sale was 14 months. And granted, my book's fairly small. I think it was 30,000 words, about 130 pages. But, still it was, I wanted very much to get this story out of me that I had been aware of for 10 years. And I wanted the experience of writing a book to see what it was like. So that was great for me. Also, with regard to my process, I long ago read this book, Stephen King's book on writing. It's a memoir he wrote about 20 years ago of how he became a writer. And I started reading Stephen King when I was pretty young. And I always really admired his ability to make his story and character so absorbing, so real. I thought he really had character down, dialogue down. Another sidebar, as a teenage young psychic medium who didn't exactly know that's what I was going to end up doing, his ability in his books, his ability to write about psychic characters who have psychic abilities, who are psychic, is really right on. From a young age, I recognized so many of his characters' impressions and thoughts and experiences really mirrored my own in terms of psychic abilities. So he has a real ability to tune into parapsychological characters, and alongside the horror stuff, that I think he has such a facility for understanding psychic abilities. So this is a really good one. I like this one in print. This is also a good Audible book to listen. I really have gotten a lot out of this. I've read it, I think, twice. Another book I use a lot for writing is this one, Dreyer's English by Benjamin Dreyer, who was a copy chief at Random House. I love vocabulary, I love grammar, but my education is not in that. And so I found this and still find this to be a great reference. Another book that was really influential for me in writing is Elizabeth Gilbert's Big Magic. And she also embodies someone who has really profound things to say about the creative process in general. If you've ever sourced a couple of her TED Talks about creativity, I think they've been around a while now. There might be even 10 or more years longer, but those TED Talks I found to always be very inspiring. This book around the creative process, trusting that, putting some structure and discipline around it. I've always loved this book. I even, she came to Seattle about, I don't know, 10 years ago. And so I went to see her speak at Benaroya Hall, and I got my book signed. So that was pretty fun for me. And then later I went with my mom and my sister. Later we went for drinks and dinner to the Sorrento Hotel in Seattle, just to recap and talk about it. And my sister and I were thinking, God, wouldn't it be great to be able to, have her as a friend? She's so inspiring. And my mom, we were saying that to each other, and my mom went to the bathroom. My mom comes out and said, I just met Elizabeth Gilbert in the bathroom. Turns out she was staying at the Sorrento Hotel. So she came by and gave my mom a hug, and I didn't talk to her, but I thought that was pretty cool. So the other thing I did in writing my first book, which was invaluable, was after I finished it, I found an editor. I found an editor who acted as a bit of a developmental editor and a line editor, which my understanding, which, for those of you who are also writers and perhaps have a little more knowledge about the writing world and writing, maybe you would have more information on this. My understanding of editors is there are kind of three basic kinds: developmental, line editor, and proofreading editor. I may be not exactly explaining this correctly, but so developmental editor, I mean, my book was already done, so I didn't need someone to help me with plot or development necessarily. Also, it was a memoir. But I did, she kind of blurred the lines between helping with arrangement and development of the story. She had some great objective perspective about that. I mean, writing a memoir, I was so subjective. It was so deep for me and personal for me. She was so great. For someone who could see my story with fresh eyes and say, this is working, this is not. And she was great. She also provided line editing services, which was, just good grammar, all the kind of good vocabulary things you would need, that I needed. I never had her proof the final galleys, so to speak, but we had together gone through it, and I'm interestingly pretty good proofreader. I think I got that from my years of doing a little bit of copywriting as a graphic designer. I also laid out the book myself. I designed the cover. I laid out, all the, if you buy the book or read the book, when you open it and read it, I typeset that. And so that was a huge learning curve for me. It was a big job. And so I don't know that I would do that again, because it was a lot of work. So that's kind of highlights that are coming to mind about my process for writing a book. I did have first readers, meaning before I hit, publish, I had 3 people in my life read the manuscript for additional feedback, which was very helpful. I decided, I researched having the book published or publishing it independently. And I, at the time, determined I was more drawn to becoming an independent author versus trying to get an agent or someone to buy my manuscript. The reason why for me is that from my research and understanding, these days, to become a published author or to be a writer who is represented, does sell their book to a publishing firm, the author is still expected to do a heck of a lot of the work, a lot of the promoting, maintaining, active, engaged, healthy social media, so I don't know, for me, I just felt like if I'm going to have to do all this promoting work myself, in addition to giving an extra cut of the royalties to a publishing firm, I just thought, I'm just going to do this myself. I know also for me, I tend to, I don't know, with my creative projects, I don't like to be told what to do. And so independent author really fits for me. And now that I've done that with one book, I can imagine with this second book I'm writing, I will do the same. I will keep growing or fostering those books independently. I can imagine it would be a very meaningful experience to go that older traditional route of having an agent, having a publisher, and letting them do all the work. I can absolutely imagine and see the benefits of that as well. So maybe one day I'll try that. Also, in even just these 4 years since I published my book, now it's not uncommon to see an independent author's book get picked up or get bought. It seemed like previously there was more cachet as an author to be published conventionally. I think that's changing. I feel like independent authors now, they get to be on bestseller lists. They get to manage their royalties. It kind of reminds me of independent musicians getting actually compensated in a fair shake at the market. My second book that I'm about 2 years into writing is going slower than my first book, because the second book I'm writing is half my contribution, my writing, my sharing, and the other half is channeled material. And so while I have been writing this book, I have also been learning and developing my abilities to channel. And so I decided I was feeling ready to explore channeling. So I'm a psychic medium. I use and develop my own extrasensory perceptions. I'm a psychic medium, which means in addition to my own extrasensory perception, I then stay open to information from those who are deceased, etc. So I go outside of myself for additional forms of extrasensory perception and information. Channeling, as in being a trance channeler, is mediumship in a different way at what I'm going to call a higher level, only because it's I'm not a translator. I move my consciousness out of the way and allow an entity to come through and speak. And so, in previous years, to channel in that way had not been anything I felt drawn to, but about 4 years ago, I began to interact with a new spirit guide who, it just developed that it felt like a natural, trusted evolution in my overall mediumship ability to add this new facet. And so there's been time for me. I've taken time to develop that process. So that's why this book is taking longer, this book I'm working on, just because I was learning a new skill. And so the process for this book is very different than the first book. So this book I'm working on is, the subject is death, dying, in the afterlife. And it's, so far, the manuscript is about it hovers between about 55,000 and 60,000 words. It's about 14 chapters. I would say it's still rough, but the information, like I said a few minutes ago, is the half of it at least is channeled information. So it's a whole different process. And so once a week I sit and channel, and then that channeled material is transcribed, and then I put it into the book in the correct chapter. And then to bridge and explain these different topics around death, dying, and the afterlife, I then, just in my own voice, kind of bridge all those channeled sessions together and explain them. So it's just taken a while, but I'm very excited about it. So those are the thoughts I have about writing. One other thing I can share, that, like I said, when I was writing the first book, having an editor, paying an editor was so worth it for the finished product. As an independent author, I understood my book, needed to look professional. It needed to sound professional as possible. And I have some proficiency at writing, I believe, but an editor was very helpful to polish things. I found my editor on a website called Reedsy.com, REEDSY.com. I found them through a podcaster named Seth Godin, who has a podcast called Akimbo that I enjoy for various reasons. And he talked about publishing. I think he used to publish books. He may still. And he talked about this resource, Reedsy.com, for independent authors, and finding editors, I think they have designers. I think they even have marketing specialists now. There's so many great resources if you want to be an independent author. So that's my process, which means I don't have one, which means my process is always changing. So, whomever of the group listens to this, if you're a writer or an author, or you have any additional comments for the person or all of us who asked this question, would love your feedback. I consider myself pretty darn new at the whole writing and book world, but it's a great facet to my work. Personally, I've gotten a lot out of learning about book writing and producing these books. So I know a lot of you. I know several of you are also writers and interested in writing books at some point, if you have not already. So. Okay, I'll sign off for now, and I'll look forward to, I think there will be actually yet another video if you're interested in these kind of not off-topic subjects, certainly not off-topic for our mentorship, but just off of the, these questions are so great, I think, because I get to share what I know about things I didn't know I was going to share with you. So when you ask me these questions, I get to share things I, had not planned to. And I think sharing information and experience is so helpful. The mentors I've had that have done that, I have really appreciated that. So your questions are great for this, and there'll be at least another one coming sometime in the next few days before our next meeting on the 22nd. Okay, talk to you soon.